This is The Inquiry. I'm Gregory Harms, and this is the fifth unedited episode. I don't know how we've done 5 of these, but we've managed to soldier on, and yeah, 5 episodes unedited without our editor, who's still in Japan. This episode will be about the formation of the moral conscience. And it will kind of dovetail with the 4th episode on innatism. And I'll talk about how our sense of right and wrong are biological and part of our genetic endowment. But first, another song got stuck in my head. I think it's called It Don't Matter to Me by Bread. Why is it only songs you don't really love get stuck in your head? A song by Bread? Yeah. So that was stuck in my head this morning. Not a great band name, Bread. I guess they were looking for a band name, and they were behind a Wonder Bread truck. And they thought, it starts with a B, bread, like the Beatles. And, so they chose Bread. It's not the first time that the back of a truck played a role in popular music. The former lead singer or founding member Dwayne Allman of the Allman Brothers, he died in a car crash. He died in a motorcycle accident. He drove his motorcycle into the back of a peach truck, and it killed him. This was in 1971 or 72, and he drove his motorcycle into the back of a peach truck. And then the band, for the subsequent album, entitled the album Eat a Peach. I kid you not. Which incidentally was the 4th album. Which was in the fourth Allman Brothers album. Sorry, I got a text. I was, this is the fourth Allman Brothers album, and which made me laugh because, I was discussing with a friend of mine many years ago about what my 4th book would be, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do for the 4th book, and he said it's the Foghat rule. And I'm like, what's the Foghat rule? And he said, 4th album's double live, which really made me laugh. I didn't know that was the Foghat rule. Like, 4th album's double live. I don't know how that applies to books, but I thought that was quite funny. And then I checked it out, and the 4th Foghat album was not double live. It was a studio album. And that's something. And then Eat a Peach was the 4th Allman Brothers album. See how many things you learn by watching The Inquiry? Oh, speaking of which, look what came in the mail, kids. Stickers. Whoop. Where's the... Yeah. Look at that. Nice sticker, huh? Send me an email and say you want some stickers and a notebook. Pretty cool. Very good quality. I was very happy with it. There's one on the refrigerator now. Very happy about that. I'm very excited. So get some stickers. Get a notebook. What was I talking about? Yeah, Allman Brothers and and Brad. And I'm getting another text. Gee, I'm so popular. That was it. Just those 2 things. What else has been on my mind? You know what I noticed? Birds spend an inordinate amount of time doing nothing. I've noticed that. I was watching this bird the other day, a robin, in the yard, and he wasn't doing anything. I'm like, what? Shouldn't he be doing something? Nah, he's just standing around, looking around. Good for him. I don't know, maybe it was a her. But I was like, yeah, good for him. I'm going to be more like a robin. More like robins. So when someone says, yo, Greg, shouldn't you be doing something? I'd be like, the birds don't do anything. And I think they know. I think it's good to, model ourselves after the animals. What? Yeah. So the next time I'm doing nothing, I'm just gonna do as the birds do, and do nothing. Okay. So human evolution. Human evolution is the study of human evolution is a bit of a tricky business because it's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together where half the pieces are missing. Maybe more than half. There's a lot we don't know. And we're just kind of piecing this together. And archaeologists find bones, and they're like, "Oh, here's a new human group." Whatever. We found we. It's like he's following a sports team. We won. Who's we? Archaeologists found years ago a massive deposit of bones in a series of caves in South Africa, and they named that group of humans Homo naledi. There's a documentary you can watch. It's really fantastic. They were pulling bones out of there for days. It was huge, like wheelbarrows full of bones. I mean, I don't know if they use wheelbarrows, but a lot of bones. And it was this cave system they found. And yeah, they just like, okay, we're going to give this one a name. And they gave it a name. And yeah. So that's putting this puzzle together is really tricky, and we know kind of how evolution works, but we don't really know precisely what the story is. Like, I'm going to show you a diagram because I don't have an editor. We can't do like a jazzy edit. I just drew something on a piece of paper here, but it'll kind of help make the point. So we're talking about human evolution today, and we are apes. We are a member of the great apes. Orangutans, gorillas, humans, chimps, and bonobos. So orangutans showed up around 12 million years ago, and then gorillas showed up around 7 million years ago. Humans showed up around 6 million years ago. More about that in a minute. And then chimps and bonobos kind of went their separate way about, 2 to 3 million years ago. Chimps and bonobos are quite similar. They look very similar, but their temperaments are a little different. So we don't know anything about what's called the common ancestor. So the common ancestor is the connecting line between, say, us and chimpanzees or us and gorillas. We went our separate. So when I say we went our separate way, and gorillas and orangutans went their separate way, they deviated from a common ancestor, and that line is the common ancestor, and we don't know anything about that common ancestor. So we don't know. This is when you hear about the missing link. This is what the missing link is supposedly. I mean, that concept's been sort of dismissed. Like there's a missing link between us and our evolutionary neighbors or something, or the link between archaic humans and us or something like this. That concept's been sort of dismissed. But we don't really know if this is how it works. Like a tree, like a branch. It might be more like a bush. It's extremely complex. It might. Chances are it's probably quite complex. And so we have our closest evolutionary neighbor is the chimpanzee, and people get, I think, overly excited about this. Tend to romanticize it. I think it's important to keep in mind that we happen to be close neighbors with the chimpanzees. But I think it's important to keep in mind that our proximity human proximity to chimpanzees it just happens to be what it is. But there might have been like a dozen different species, different genus groups, not homo. We're the Homo genus. More about that in a minute. There might have been more species, more genera, the plural of genus, between us and chimpanzees, but they might be extinct. We don't know. What we do know is that our closest evolutionary neighbor is a chimpanzee. So this brings to mind a common misunderstanding that we are, or chimpanzees, I should say, are under-evolved humans. No. Chimpanzees are chimpanzees, and humans are humans. And they're just two different animals. Like gerbils and, like hamsters and, I can't think of what's that big animal that's like a big hamster? What's that called? What's that called? I want to say groundhog, but that's not, or like, a hedgehog. That's not a hedgehog. But they're just like parrots and parakeets, They're just two different animals. They're like, parrots aren't highly evolved parakeets. They're just a different kind of bird. They're just different animals. They're just two different types of animals. And humans and chimpanzees are the two different types of animal. Chimpanzees aren't undercooked humans. It's just, and we didn't descend from chimpanzees. We descended from a common ancestor, and we don't know anything about the common ancestor, as mentioned. And so we get humans and we get chimpanzees. There's just two different types of animal. So here's my diagram. I'll show you my diagram. It's not very good, and part of my handwriting because my hands and my arms are a little weird neurologically. So, like, if you see this, like, the orangutan and the gorilla and the human and the chimps and the bonobos, I put 2 there, 12, 7, 6, and 2. Okay, so that's kind of what this looks like, Can you see that? Orangutans, gorillas, humans, chimps, and bonobos. So we don't know. So the common ancestor is that line that kind of runs through the whole thing, to chimps and bonobos. And we don't know anything about the common ancestor, but we know something about the ends of the branches. And we know something about the nodes, at the nodes, evolutionary nodes. But that's it. We know the ends and the nodes. That's it. We don't know anything about the connecting line between us and gorillas, for example. Safe to say it looked rather ape-like. Safe to say. So if we take into consideration Lucy's very famous set of bones. She was found in Ethiopia in 1974. If you look at the thumbnail photo on this episode, there's a little girl standing next to, this is my little girl, she's a little taller than that. I don't know why I did that. A little girl standing next to Lucy. So what they did is they found, I can't remember, I think it's around 40% of the skeleton of Lucy in Ethiopia in the mid-70s. And then they very impressively put together the skeleton. And they had one femur, but they didn't have the other femur, so they made a copy of the other femur. And they made half the pelvis, and they replicated the other half of the pelvis, and they put together the rib cage, which probably took some doing, and they put together a skull, and then there's artistic interpretations of what Lucy might have looked like with skin and hair and muscle and all that stuff. But Lucy is, so you can look it up on Google, pictures of Lucy, like artistic interpretations of what Lucy might have looked like, and she looks like an ape. I mean, if you saw Lucy in the forest, you'd be like, "That's an ape." And that was us 3.2 million years ago. Lucy. She got her name because they were playing that song by the Beatles at the dig site. Then just someone named her Lucy. And then that was it, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Which was, incidentally, just as an aside note, was not about LSD. John Lennon's son, Julian, drew a picture for school, and it was this lady floating in the sky, and he titled the picture Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and John Lennon wrote the song. It just happens to be LSD. There it is, like Lakeshore Drive. And then there was a song about Lakeshore Drive that they wouldn't play on the radio because they thought it was a drug reference. So the radio station played the B-side, which was, I believe, called Snow Angel, and that was about drugs. Rock and roll history is funny. So Lucy is 3.2 million years old, and that's how we looked. We didn't just deviate from the common ancestor and then presto, we looked like me. It took quite a while to go from Lucy, and that's only 3.2 million years ago. We deviated 6 million, speciated, if you will, 6 million years ago. But even as recent as 3.2 million years ago, we looked like Lucy, and Lucy looks like an ape, like what you would think an ape looks like. But she walked on 2 feet, bipedal, and yeah. Where was I going with that? Yeah, so it took quite a while to get from Lucy to me, or Lucy to you, or whoever. It took a long time. It's only as recent as 200,000 years ago that we become what archaeologists call anatomically modern. That is, we anatomically sort of look like, well, maybe not me or you, but we look like, what you would think of a Homo sapiens looks like, what the Homo sapiens looks like. That's 200,000 years ago. And then 45,000 years ago, something rather spectacular happens. We become culturally modern. So this is important. This is a massive step forward in the history of our species. I should have mentioned that. I should have mentioned that Lucy is Australopithecus. So she wasn't Homo sapiens. She's Australopithecus, which is an early version of human. And then from Australopithecus, we get Homo erectus, and we get Homo habilis, and we get a whole list of Homo species that eventually become Homo sapiens. So I should have mentioned that. So 200,000 years ago, anatomically modern. 45,000 years ago, culturally modern. So what do I mean by culturally modern? We're us as of 45,000 years ago. So if you look at the cave paintings. You can go online and look at Lascaux, Lasceaux. Lascaux, they're in Lascaux, France. That's a cave in Lascaux, France. The cave paintings in Lascaux are quite breathtaking and very impressive. Pablo Picasso visited the Lascaux caves, and he said when he walked in to the cave and looked at the cave paintings, he's like, "We've innovated nothing," which is kind of interesting. He's like, we've invented nothing. We've done nothing. These guys, 30,000, the Lascaux paintings are about 25 or 30,000 years ago. And yeah, the paintings are really impressive. And yeah, Pablo Picasso was like, "Yep, we've done nothing." It kind of reminded me of a comment that Chuck Berry, I'm bringing up rock and roll history again. Chuck Berry mentioned, he said, I think he told Ronnie Woods, one of the guitarists of the Rolling Stones, I think he told Ronnie Woods this. He said, we're not doing anything Mozart ain't already done." Same comment, same idea. We've innovated nothing. We've done nothing. There's nothing new to do. Which is kind of funny and kind of depressing. Everything's already been done. Mozart did all that stuff, and what the Rolling Stones do that Mozart didn't already do in some different way, but different musical style, but still, in the cave paintings, that's us. So my point is that let's say you got in the time machine. You got a time machine and you went back to when those paintings were being painted in Lascaux, France, in those caves. And let's say you get out of your time machine and you kidnap a newborn infant. And you bring the kid back to the time machine and you bring the child back to 2025. That child would go to university, learn English, and then go to university, major in computer science or nursing, and you'd never know the difference. You'd never know the difference. Because that's us. And we have a very cartoony, reductive view of people living in caves. I think it's a Geico commercial, the insurance company Geico, and there's a caveman, like he's wearing like normal like modern attire, and he sees like a poster like in an airport or something, some advertisement for whatever, and it's got a caveman, and it's insulting to cavemen, and he's like, really? And he's insulted. I think that's kind of funny because it's kind of true, in a way. We have a very dismissive, like I said, cartoony, two-dimensional view of people living in caves. The people living in caves, the people living in Lascaux, those Lascaux caves in France, those are very sophisticated people. And those are not violent paintings. If you look at the paintings, they're just animals. We don't know what the significance was. If they're just honoring the animals or they're commemorating a hunt of some kind or whatever. But there aren't war scenes. There's no violence in those paintings. Because human beings living 30,000 years ago, were foragers, hunter-gatherers, you might say, and they weren't set up. They weren't set up for violent behavior. They weren't set up for warfare. It just wouldn't make any sense. Furthermore, there we go again. Furthermore, moreover, I'm going to break. I think I say furthermore too much. Moreover, into the bargain. That's a good one. If we were violent creatures, just prone to tearing each other limb from limb, we wouldn't be here. We rely on one another. We cooperate. That's not to suggest we always get along. and there has been warfare, and more on that in a minute. But human beings largely cooperate and get along. Have to. And it's why we're still here. And we don't know why we're the only species of the Homo genus left. The Neanderthals, they went extinct about 40,000 years ago. Homo floresiensis was a diminutive species living around Indonesia. They were here 12,000 years ago, which is mind-blowing, that there was another Homo group walking the earth. But we are literally and figuratively the last man standing, and we don't know why. Did we kill them all? Did something environmental take place? We don't know. But we're here, and the reason we're here is because we're cooperative. We're not, you know, we just assume that, like, you know, these early humans, the archaic humans, you might say, early Homo groups, early Homo species, were just like tearing each other apart, and probably not. Early Homo sapiens were just tearing each other apart, you know. Probably not. Because, like I said, we wouldn't be here if that was the case. And there's really no archaeological evidence to suggest that life was like that for early Homo sapiens. And you say 100,000 years ago or 200,000 years ago. There's no evidence to suggest that. And we don't see that when we look at the archaeology, even as recent as, say, 30,000 years ago. We don't see that. I mean, people, they got in fights, you know. Chimpanzees get in fights, we get in fights, early humans got in fights, but that didn't define what the species was. It didn't define what life was like for people living in those caves. Those people were very smart and very highly cooperative and creative, and probably didn't tear each other apart. So, culturally modern at 45,000 years ago. Now, a number of interesting things take place. One, and that is like the subject of this episode, is the formation of the moral conscience. That is, a revolution took place among early Homo sapiens. Ape groups are typically dominated by an alpha male. Chimpanzees, gorillas, there's an alpha male. And the alpha male is, you know, the boss, and the alpha male takes what he wants, and the alpha male mates with the females, and he helps himself to whatever, you know. Early Homo sapiens got fed up with alpha males and started to punish them. There was kind of an uprising, a kind of a revolution. And we started to punish and banish, which is basically a death sentence. We started to banish those alpha males, and any person who behaved like an alpha male, anyone who exhibited that behavior got punished, or killed, or, you know, whatever, banished, which, like I said, is basically a death sentence anyway, because humans don't do very well on their own. Humans. So, humans started to punish alpha male behavior. And it was in the context of big game hunting. I'm referencing now a very good book by an anthropologist, Christopher Boehm, who wrote a fantastic book called Moral Origins. I highly recommend reading it. Moral Origins by Christopher Boehm, Boehm. And Christopher Boehm writes about in his book, Moral Origins, that it was in the context of big game hunting that humans human groups became more egalitarian. So we don't know what came first, either the big game hunting, and then that led to human groups being more egalitarian, or we became more egalitarian and cooperative, which led to big game hunting. We don't know what came first, the big game hunting or the egalitarianism. Never suffice it to say that it was in the context of big game hunting that humans, it's a very dangerous activity hunting a large animal like that, and it requires an impressive level of cooperation. And then when you're done, you got this huge animal, ungulates is the term, which references their hooves. Large ungulates, they take down this huge animal, and you got a lot of meat on your hands. So equitable meat distribution became really important in early human groups. And then, because the alpha male would typically take what he wanted and cut his friends in, and everyone else got scraps. But that didn't wash in these early human groups. And equitable meat distribution became a thing because you had a more horizontal distribution of power. The alpha males got suppressed, got killed or punished, and then so you either kept those impulses to yourself or you paid for it, probably quite violently. So with the equitable distribution of meat comes a set of expectations. With the more horizontal distribution of power, there becomes a set of expectations, a code of conduct, if you will. You didn't just take what you wanted. You didn't take more than your fair share. Each family, each group, each whatever got their own parcel of meat, and everyone got an equal share. And over the course of, it probably takes about 1,000 generations, which is about 25,000 years. This process probably took quite a while, but eventually that code of conduct entered the human genome, which is really impressive. That's where so then that set of expectations, that code of conduct, if you will, enters into the human genome, and your sense of right and wrong probably stems back to that set of expectations in the early Homo sapiens, early human groups. And it's probably why, we don't know, but it's probably why you blush when you say something you shouldn't say, or you get caught doing something you shouldn't do. You blush. We're the only animals that blush. So why is that? Chances are we need to be careful about drawing straight lines from evolutionary, from phenotypes to evolutionary explanations. What do I mean by phenotype? A phenotype is an observable trait or characteristic as a result of animal interaction with the environment. When the genotype changes, then you get changes in the phenotype. So the phenotype are the observable traits and characteristics. So we need to be careful about drawing a straight line from, humans do this thing, so there must be an evolutionary explanation. Frequently not. Human beings do a lot of, it's breathtaking. I have a book on my shelf by Steven Pinker, and in the appendix, there's a list by an anthropologist. An anthropologist came up with a list of things that all human groups do, like body ornamentation, It is a mile-long list of things. Like all human beings engage in dance. All human groups make art. All human groups make music. It's common among all human groups that a couple will go off and privately engage in romance. They won't just, get caught in flagrante delicto just in front of everybody. That probably happens sometimes, but at parties, I don't or at certain parties. But typically, look at the species. No, a couple will go off in private and engage in romance. So there's a mile long list of things that humans do, and humans do, but draw a straight line from that thing to that behavior to an evolutionary explanation. No, we're going to be very careful. But the blushing thing, chances are, if I turn red in the face, it signals to you that I know the rules, and I got caught doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. And you're more likely to cut me some slack if you know I know the rules. So maybe a friend of yours did you a bad turn, did you a wrong turn, and you're very unhappy with that friend. So if the friend apologizes and shows remorse, you're more likely to let that friend off the hook and apologize, or not apologize, but, forgive that friend. But if the friend is unapologetic, I'm like, well, he's my boyfriend now, then you're probably less likely to forgive that person if they're unapologetic. And that, not to see you bash them over the head with a rock, but you might want to, but you probably won't. But in early human groups, maybe you did get bashed over the head with a rock. But so this blushing might save my life. Might have saved many lives, and that's why we do it. That's a guess. But like I said, we need to be conservative and careful with evolutionary explanations. So that set of expectations entered the human genome, and that is why we are. That's when and how we became moral. Now, we've finessed our morality. There are things like etiquette, like holding the door open for people, or not cutting in line or stuff like this. You don't belch at the table, You did as a kid, and then you got, your parents told you, you shouldn't do that. And then you did it again, and then you get yelled at, and then you just, okay, it's not worth it. These people don't have a sense of humor. And then you quit doing it. And then now, as an adult, you wouldn't do that because you just feel weird. So you had to learn that stuff. You had to learn, what's tantamount to etiquette, You had to learn that. But the basic, the core, the fundamental sense of right and wrong. If you do something or say something you shouldn't have, and then later at night and you're lying in bed and you're like, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. It bothers you. Well, there's a reason it bothers you. It's because you have a conscience, and it bothers, and it's affecting your conscience. An iguana doesn't have that. Chimpanzee doesn't even have that. Mammals are more social, like squirrels and rabbits, and they're more mice, even dogs, wolves, certainly, chimpanzees, obviously. They're social beings. They're more interactive with one another, whereas reptiles and spiders, not so much. It's why if you have a dog at home and you had a crummy day. Or a really bad day, and you're sitting on the couch and you're emotional, your dog comes and checks you out. Well, that's, The dog is a descendant of the wolf, and wolves are very smart, and wolves know one another, and wolves are clued into their members of their pack, and you are a member of that dog's pack. You live with that dog every day. And that dog, you're on that dog's radar. And the dog knows when that something's wrong with you. If you had a pet iguana, then the iguana would just, like, at best, stare at you. You know, the iguana doesn't care because the iguana doesn't have the brain architecture to care. The iguana can't. So for the same reason that the iguana can't do calculus. It can't. It doesn't have the architecture. It can't do that. It doesn't have the shelving. It doesn't have the the infrastructure. It can't do that, you know. That's why you have that sense of right and wrong. The fundamental, your core sense of right and wrong. Like I said, you had to finesse. You had to learn some of this stuff. You know, your parents taught you, your grandparents taught you, older siblings taught you. You shouldn't do that, you know. And then now, as an adult, you've internalized that set of expectations. But your core sense of right and wrong, no one taught you that. No one taught you. Well, you know, you shouldn't strangle an infant. No one taught you that. No one explained that to you. And what's interesting is if you present a 4-year-old, say, with a newborn infant, the 4-year-old's very careful with the infant. And no one taught the 4-year-old to do that. 4-year-olds are notorious for doing the opposite of what they're told. But you hand a newborn baby to a kid for, say, 4 or 5 or whatever. They're very careful with it. Why is that? Because they know. Because they biologically know that you're supposed to be careful with the baby. You just do it. It's like your body knows it. You do it too. I mean, you sort of intellectually know to be careful with the baby, but your body knows you're careful with an infant. You don't have to think it through. You don't like, I'm holding a baby, I should be careful. No, you sort of physically know to be careful with the infant. Same with the 4-year-old, you know. I've seen young kids presented with I don't know how many babies, and they're always careful. They're always like, you know, and they kind of look at it and, you know, and they hold it very carefully. And yeah, I mean, even if the adults are saying, "No, be careful," I mean, tell a 4-year-old, like, okay, don't stick something in that electric socket, and then they'll go straight for the electric socket. You know, they're notorious for doing the opposite of what they're told. But now, when it comes to a newborn infant, the consistency is tough to miss. So we become moral, you could say, about 45,000 years ago. And yet people say, still, I hear it, we get our morality from religion, which is roughly, the oldest is 3,000 years old. And some a lot less time than that. The oldest religions are probably Judaism and Hinduism, and there are a couple others. You got Christianity, which is a little younger. You got Islam, which is younger still. But 3,000 years old, and what I'm calling religion, I'm being specific. I'm talking about something that's organized, codified, scriptural. That's religion. Now, we humans I'll do a whole separate podcast episode. I did it again. I called it a podcast episode. You can just call it an episode. I'll do a separate episode on religion. But just real quick, what I'm calling religion is, like I said, scriptural, codified, organized. And human beings have not been doing that for very long. That, you know, in terms of the history of the species, that's like we started doing that like yesterday, like this morning. We haven't been doing that for very long. So we were moral 45,000 years ago. We were religious 3,000 years ago. And yes, human spirituality goes back way far. And we're talking about animism and skull cults. And I'll go into that in a separate episode. a separate podcast episode. Pretty cool, huh? Stickers. God, they turn out really well. The print quality is very impressive. You can put them on your car if you want. I want to start a guerrilla art campaign and put the stickers everywhere. I want it to become a thing, like Shepard Fairey's Obey campaign with the Andre the Giant. You seen that? Obey with the Andre the Giant graphic. Yeah, I want it to be like that. I want the Inquiry to be the new Obey. Look that up online if you're not familiar with Shepard Fairey and the Obey Andre the Giant campaign. It's fantastic. Really, really good piece of guerrilla art. What was I talking about? So we didn't get morality from religion. Chances are we write our morality onto our religions, which is why our religions bear so much in common at the core. They're practically indistinguishable at the core. They're dramatically diverse and different at the surface. So the religions, the high holidays, the places they worship, they're very different. But at the core, you can barely tell them apart, which is a lot like us. Dramatically different at the surface and practically indistinguishable at the core. So also, into the bargain, I didn't say furthermore, not only did we become moral as of 45,000 years ago, but we don't know language. We became linguistic, maybe, we don't know, 70,000 years ago, maybe a little more. That kicked in. And we become linguistic, and we started thinking grammatically. That's also part of the genetic endowment. Language, morality, and I would argue, religion. Humans seem to naturally tend toward the spiritual. And I'll do a separate episode just on religion, and we'll talk about this further. But just right now, human beings have been doing Neanderthals had ritualistic behavior, and you started to see it in Neanderthals and early human groups, early Homo sapiens. They started dabbling with, like I said, animism, skull cults. That's a personal favorite. We'll talk about skull cults. But this is going on like 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago. Humans look up at the sky and they think about what happens. Where do I go when I die? And what are those pricks of light up in the sky? What is that? Why is the sky making noise? Human beings think about this stuff. And what is that? What does that have to do with me? And when Grandpa just died, where did he go? This all becomes what became religion. And human beings have the brain architecture to do that. Chimpanzee doesn't look up at the sky. Chimpanzee doesn't think about his or her mortality and as a chimpanzee, I might die soon. What have I done with my life? Chimpanzees don't think about this. But human beings do think about that stuff. And we have thought about that stuff for quite a long time. And then it just finds expression in religion fairly recently. Quite recently, we might say. And yeah, there's a reason our religions bear our stamp, bear our imprimatur, bear our they're structured a lot like us. Well, it makes perfect sense that our religions would be structured like us because we made them. This does not have anything to do with faith. I'm not making a comment about what you believe. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I'll talk about that some more in the episode on religion, but I'm not making a comment about what people believe. I'm just saying, if we look at the archaeological record, we look at what anthropologists have to say, it looks like humans made gods and then humans made religions, and there's a really good reason why they bear so much in common, and they're structured a whole lot like us. So, yeah. Did I cover everything? I felt like I was talking kind of fast. Have I been talking kind of fast? I'm kind of jittery. I'm amped up today. I don't know why. I don't drink coffee. I like coffee, but I don't drink coffee. But I feel like I've been like, blah, 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 blah. I'm kind of motor mouth a little bit. I hope I wasn't too motor mouthy. I just had iced tea. That's all I had. Pretty good iced tea. A friend of mine started a tea company in California called August. I'm plugging his tea company. August.la. Check it out. And the iced tea that I use, that I prefer, is called Low Country. So good. Oh my God. You couldn't buy this stuff in Jewel. Not going to happen. Low Country from August.la. Check it out. If you like tea and you like iced tea, brew up some Low Country. You won't be disappointed. That's it. We really need to do a religion episode, don't we? I don't know if that's going to be the next episode. But get those stickers, kids. They're pretty cool. I'll send you like 3 or 4 of them. And a notebook. Okay. I don't know. Well, I got to think about what the next episode's going to be for the inquiry. I was supposed to hit stop right there. Okay. I'll think about the next episode of the inquiry.